You are listening to UpTalk with Sean Conahan. The gloves are off, and it's time to have a chat.
Hello, people. It's been far too long since we sat down and had a chat. So welcome to episode 13 of the UpTalk podcast. Again, I apologize for the long delay in between episodes. Had some life stuff that I had to take care of, and one thing I've learned through this journey with PTSD is that I am not a good multitasker. So when something needs to get taken care of, I need to concentrate on that and leave other things for the time being. So those things are done, so it's time to get back at it. I would like to thank my sponsors this year, the Compass Rose Health and Wellness Center in Bedford, Nova Scotia, Life Shield Medical and First Aid Training, Dan Sun Photography, on board for another year, and I'm excited to tell you that Project Trauma Support has come on as a title sponsor for the podcast this year. You'll be learning all about them this year, throughout the year. In addition to our normal guests, we'll be having people on that are connected to Project Trauma Support, and we'll teach you about it. I was lucky enough to take part in this program back in December. It was life-changing, and you're going to learn all about it. That's my mission for this year. I hope you'll enjoy learning about it, and we'll look into the program. You can learn about all the sponsors on the website, uptalkpodcast.com, your one-click stop for everything UpTalk. My guests this episode are awesome, as usual. Jill Foster from I've Got Your Back 911. Tyler Anstey, who is a Halifax Regional Police Officer, as well as a mental health advocate. We're going to have a chat with him. And last but not least, my first Project Trauma Support program chat with Dr. Manuela Joannou, who is the founder of the program. We'll have a chat with her. As always, before we get going, trigger warning for those who do have trigger issues. There may be things talked about in the conversations that could be triggering to some people, so just make sure that you're in a good headspace before you sit down to listen so that you can get the most out of it. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. So let's get to it. My first guest this episode is Jill Foster. You may know her as Yes Yes Jill on Facebook. You may know her as an awesome paramedic or a DJ under the same name, Yes Yes Jill, or as a crazy awesome mental health advocate as co-founder of hashtag I've Got Your Back 911. I hope you enjoy this chat I had with Jill. I enjoyed it very much, learning more about her. She's a definitely unique individual and someone that we need in this fight against stigma for mental health, especially when it comes to mental health of our first responders. So join me in welcoming Jill to the podcast. Okay, welcome to the podcast, Jill. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I thank you very much for coming on, especially after a night shift. I know what that's like.
Pleasure is all mine.
No, thanks. Thanks. I'm sure if our listeners haven't heard of you before this interview, they're certainly going to be looking you up afterwards. I know I sort of started following you after I had Sean Taylor on last year.
Yeah.
And your partner in I've Got Your Back 911. And then I started following you, and then all I can say is it's hard to explain, but it's exhausting looking at all of the things that you do. Like, I have no idea how you pack everything into your day, because it seems like, first of all, you work regularly as a paramedic, and so I'm sure that has a regular busy schedule, but then it seems every event, everything that could be going on surrounding mental health or first responders in Ontario, for some reason you are there at every single one. It's very inspiring. I find you very a really positive inspiration when I'm looking at your stuff that you put on. So it's a pleasure for me to have you on.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Oh, no, you're very welcome. So maybe, first of all, before we get into the whole I've Got Your Back 911, just tell us about you, like your upbringing and maybe, up to the point where you became a paramedic.
So, I've only been a paramedic for, I guess 5 years. Actually, Sean and I, we went to school together. We went to paramedic school together.
Right.
It's a second career for both of us. So before going to school to be a paramedic, I was living up in Ottawa working for the school board. I was doing some, work in the classrooms with, special needs kids. And then I also worked in a rehab, facility for, men with acquired brain injuries. So I did that for a while. Yeah. And then I was working in a mental health facility for, youth in crisis up in Ottawa. So I kind of come from, I guess, a social worky background, even though I'm not, I didn't go to school for that originally. Like I just have I went to university, I have a BA in geography. So I'm not too sure how I ended up here.
Wow. Yeah. That's a weird trip.
Yeah. Then I actually kind of got a little bit bored doing what I was doing. And, don't get me wrong. I loved all the people and the kids I was working with, but, I just decided to go back and go back to school. I had the opportunity to get a grant to go back to school, and I kind of jumped on that opportunity and decided to go back to become a medic. So so I worked for 2 services, part-time for each service. I'm currently in a full-time contract for one of the services, but that's kind of what I do. I guess in my spare time, if I ever come across any of that, I also DJ.
Yes, I see these pictures, all the stuff of you DJing.
Yeah, so I DJ, kind of all around, Ontario. I've DJed, pretty much across Canada, but I mainly DJ in Ontario right now, when I have time. And that's usually in Toronto. So I usually make the trip up to Toronto.
So do you have a DJ name?
Well, sort of. So me and my friends throw this big party in Toronto, and the party's called Yes, Yes, Y'all.
Yes.
So, so my DJ name is, Yes, Yes, Jill.
Nice. Which was, of course, your Facebook name until they made you change it.
That's right. They made me change it. So I had to prove to them that, my name wasn't actually, in fact, Yes, Yes, Jill, and I had to give them my government ID name. Yeah. So, bit of a, but yeah.
Crazy. So obviously, then I didn't realize you had early experiences dealing with mental health situations then, in all the different aspects that you were in.
Yeah. So it all kind of started. I left Thunder Bay. I went to university in Thunder Bay. I moved to Ottawa, and I was going to Algonquin College.
Right.
Doing like a recreation facility management diploma program or certificate program. And then from there I started working for the city of Ottawa, kind of doing programming for kids with special needs.
Right.
So social recreational programs for kids with special needs. So that's kind of how it all started. I kind of jumped in there, got my feet wet doing that. And then just from all the experience I gained doing that, I then started into ABI stuff, and then I started into mental health stuff with additional training along the way. But that's what all kind of came about. So
now, when you started working as a paramedic, like how long into that did you sort of sit back and realize, like, wow, there's a big problem here. There's an issue that is out here that no one's talking.
You know what? I think initially I was so excited to be on the road and actually working. That's something that I loved, that I wasn't really, I guess maybe cluing into it.
Yeah.
Just because
everything
was so new to me, right?
Yeah.
So I was I've been on 5 years, probably about 2.5 years in. That's when, I was on Facebook, one day and I just kept seeing these, kind of like news alerts about first responders dying by suicide. And it was October of 2014 that I was talking to Sean and I'm like, Man, this is crazy. Like, it appears that there's a suicide every week.
Yeah.
You know, it almost came to what I thought was sort of crisis sort of numbers. And, so I reached out to Sean and I was like, I don't know what we can do, but it seems like nobody's talking about this. Like, nobody's talking about it. It's popping up all over Facebook, but nobody's really addressing the real issues.
Right.
So that's kind of how the ball started getting rolling for the campaign. But,
right. So that brings us to hashtag I've Got Your Back 911, which is huge, massive.
Yeah.
Ever growing thing, apparently. It seems to be anyway.
Yeah, I say to Sean, I'm like, I don't know. I think we've created a bit of a monster here because we truly were not ready. We were not ready for sort of what's evolved.
Yeah, because weren't you were, and maybe you still are, you were making the clothing at where you live.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
So initially we thought, hey, maybe we'll make a few t-shirts to kind of go along with the campaign and, you know, we'll either just kind of bomb them out to people or we'll sell a few of them. And, I got these t-shirts like screen printed just with our hashtag across the front and, you know, they were gone within, you know, hours. Wow. So we thought, hey, maybe there's another side to this. Maybe we can, you know, start kind of selling things on the side to raise money to kick back into the campaign. And that's how that all sort of started. It, you know, we never really intended on having a clothing line.
Yeah.
You know, an online store. That was never really our intent. The main goal was really just to kind of put it out there, get people talking and provide sort of a safe space for people to come to and recognize, hey, there's other people out here, you know, like me that are suffering, you know, also to provide resources for people and things like that. But just to kind of show the world, I guess, at this point that, you know, everyday people, you know, first responders are really, really, truly suffering.
Yeah, for sure they are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I mean, do you guys have any kind of way to quantify just how big of a footprint you guys are making as far as in social media and like how much of a reach you guys are getting?
Yeah, as an administrator or moderator, I guess, at the page, you can kind of sort of go in backdoor and take a look at all the stats and things like that.
Yeah.
We have people from all over the world that follow the campaign. So, for example, Sean and I kind of always use, we posted one post maybe about a year and a half ago, and you can actually see how many people have seen the post. Yeah. And it was over 1 million people. So, that's just through views and shares and people resharing, right? So, you also too have to be really careful with, what we put on there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know, and we're still learning, like, we make mistakes as moderators sometimes do, right? Like, and we try to rectify them as quickly as possible because you're dealing with a very sensitive, I guess, demographic and, people who are easily triggered, you know, and that's the last thing we want to be doing. But you never know what's going to trigger someone, right? So we try to keep the content as, I guess, as peaceful as possible, you know?
Yeah. That's hard to do. That's a hard line to try to stay behind because, as you say, anything could trigger anybody where this is so individualized and no one person may be the same.
Yeah.
It's really hard to keep on top of.
You know what? It's really tough. And, you know, just with the Facebook, the Instagram and the Twitter. The Instagram and the Twitter are a little bit easier. It seems like they're a little bit easier to manage just to maybe because there's a little bit of a different audience on those sort of forums.
Yeah.
The Facebook is a little more difficult to manage, I guess you could say. And it's a 24-hour job. I kid you not, because you know, if something gets posted on there, say we post something and someone replies to it in any type of way that we kind of view as, not really fitting with, I guess, the appropriate sort of guidelines.
Right.
You know, things can go south on there very, very fast. And,
yeah.
I don't know if I'm sure you've seen, you know, just us kind of going on there sometimes, making statements, trying to get stuff cleaned a little bit. But, you really have to be mindful and, make sure it stays a safe space for people. So, occasionally we don't like to do it, but sometimes, we have to delete posts and, and block people, because if you don't, it goes south very fast. And if you don't, I really don't have time to be, following this post to see if it's going to go south, because I just don't have time, like a lot of the time Sean and I are answering emails, from work, from standbys, from in the ambulance, so it's not easy. I mean, it's, I guess we kind of signed up for it, but it's definitely not easy.
No, for sure. I mean, obviously you're happy. I mean, it is a lot of work. You're obviously happy where it is right now. It's doing so much work, it's helping so many people around the world. Where do you see it? Do you see it going anywhere from here, or are you happy in the state it's in right now?
To be honest, I'd like to maybe hire on, maybe like a Facebook social media type manager.
Right.
Just to kind of manage that aspect of it. I said to Sean the other day, what are we going to do with this? I don't really want to be living my life constantly having to go online and moderate other people,
Right.
So, we've kind of, kicked around that idea a little bit. Ideally, and this is maybe a bit of a pipe dream of mine, but I would love to I'd love to open up retail locations all across Canada. Walk up stores, walk up retail locations.
Yeah.
Where people can come in and kind of get the garments and the gear there. And I would love to staff them with first responders who are off work with some sort of mental health issue, who are off work, waiting on their insurance to come in, if it ever comes in. I would love to be able to do that. That's a bit of a pipe dream of mine, but I mean,
we can open your Halifax store right now today, Joe. We can make that happen. That's no problem.
Maybe we'll have you manage it.
And I will manage it. I'll be very happy to do that. I'll have my little podcast booth on site. I can do my interviews. It'd be awesome.
We'll fly out there and get you set up.
Yeah, make it happen. We're good. That's good to go.
Yeah, so that's kind of my dream. I don't know if that will ever come to fruition, but
well, I think that'd be incredible. And then you could have, in the store, you could have make sure you have access to information about, links in the area or resources in the area to help them, and it's so much stuff you could put in there.
Yeah, nice supportive staff who kind of understand what you're going through. If you need to take a day off, bring your service dog to work. It'll be awesome. It's a vision for sure. But
well, I can see it definitely happening. Like that's not that's not an unreasonable vision. I think it would be awesome. It'd be great. If someone goes on the website, I've Got Your Back 911 website, how can they, or is there a place in there where they can help contribute?
Yeah, we have people kind of all the time reaching out to us, wanting to volunteer their services and things like that. And we're super appreciative of that. It's just kind of difficult for us to manage because, like I said, Sean and I, we're still on the road and, hopefully we'll be working as paramedics for quite some time. So for us to kind of manage all of these people, it's very difficult. So we do a lot of the work ourselves. We contract, the online store work out, and I do have a lady right now who's actually off work with some mental health issues. She does all of our shipping and packing and things like that. But, as far as helping out, if people buy a t-shirt or something, something they can afford, we try to keep things, somewhat affordable for people. If people can buy a t-shirt and wear that t-shirt and start a conversation with people out in the community, that's more than enough help. It was really about spreading the conversation. So anytime someone can represent the cause, in a positive way, we super appreciate it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
We also have a charitable fund set up, right? So people can donate to that online.
And is that link right on your website, is it?
That link is in our online store. So if you go on our website, I've got your back911.com, there's a little link that says our store. And if you click on our store, there's actually a tab in there that says donate. I think donate today or something like that. So if they choose that option versus, buying a t-shirt or a hoodie or whatever, they can make a payment online, they automatically get a tax receipt, because it is a charitable donation. And then, that money kind of goes into a fund, and then we grant that money out to different organizations, within the community that deal with mental health stuff for first responders. So, be it service dogs, we've made donations to Camp Faces, which is a camp that's set up for children of deceased first responders.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. We'd like to sponsor events. We'll happily send people to events if they want to attend. On our dime, that's no problem. Usually if there's an event coming up that's of interest to us, we'll post it up on the Facebook page and just kind of do a call out. If anyone would like to attend, send us an email and we'll send you. So we'll sponsor that registration fee for people. So.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. We've sent a lot of people to a lot of events over the last 2.5 years, so it seems to work,
That's great. Now you were at the Tema Gala, were you, just recently?
I was recently at the Tema Gala, yes.
So did you meet Kevin Davison?
You know what? I actually didn't meet Kevin.
You didn't meet him? Did you happen to see the video?
I did see the video. Yep, they played the video at the gala. I didn't meet him. He was
No.
He was far too popular.
He is a diva, and he'll get so mad at me for saying that, but he is. He's good at what he does. He's an entertainer for sure. Always a social butterfly.
Surrounded by all the people all the time. So
it's the same here when he's home. Don't worry. What were your thoughts on the video, though? I wouldn't mind getting your opinion on that.
You know what? It's interesting because right when the campaign launched 2.5 years ago, I don't know if it was him, but someone sent us. It might have been him. He sent us kind of raw sort of footage of him. Playing.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, on YouTube, I think. So we were very happy to kind of take that and repost it and try to get it out to, the masses. And I think it ended up reaching quite a few people. So that maybe sparked his whole vision to make a video. But great. I wish I could have met him. Like I said, he was a little bit busy. I was a little bit busy, but, the more exposure, that we can get out there as first responders, I mean, the better, right?
Yeah.
And I think it does have some credibility because he actually is a first responder, so coming from people.
I found it really powerful. Definitely a powerful, video to watch for sure.
Yeah. So, and then right after it kind of launched, we had, I don't know how many people we had send it to us. Hey, have you seen this video? Can you repost it? Can you repost it? Can you repost it? All over our timeline, So,
yeah, for sure. Huh. So, if people want to hook up with you guys on social media, how can they do that on the different platforms?
So our Facebook page is just I've got your back 911.com. Sorry, hashtag I've got your back 911. And then we do have Twitter. It's I got your back 911.
Right.
Instagram, same thing. I've got your back 911. And if they need to contact me directly for whatever reason, I can be found at Jill at I've got your back 911.com. And any ordering issues related to the store, they can reach out to order at I've got your back 911.com.
Oh wow, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, yes. And I'll post these links on our the guest area of our website, so everybody will be able to go see that once this is out.
Awesome.
So I always ask everybody, Jill, if you could say something to somebody listening who is having a rough time, mental health wise, and just doesn't quite know where to turn. I know how that feels personally. What would you say to them?
I would say to them, pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. It's not always that easy for a lot of people, but
right.
It's very obvious that there's a lot of people out here willing to help. And I think the campaign can kind of speak for that in itself. We have over 1 million people viewing, posts of ours. I think, people kind of get in such a rabbit hole that they can't really see any way out of it. But, there's definitely people out here who are willing to listen, who are willing to redirect them to the proper help that they might need. And,
Right.
and if someone does reach out to you, just do the right thing, right? Just be a good person, be a good listener. And, sometimes that's all someone really needs,
Well said, yeah.
Yeah.
Very well said. That is hard. That to reach out initially can be hard, but, just to try to push through it and do it and know that you're obviously not alone. We're a small community of billions of people now, so, there's always a place to reach out. But, Jill, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and I think you're awesome. I love you. You are certainly a shining example, for first responders, and, I love everything that you do and what you stand for, and looking forward to seeing what you do next, for sure.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I'm sure I'll catch you online at some point.
I'm sure. All right, you take care.
All right, Sean, thanks so much.
All right, thanks.
All right, bye-bye.
My next guest is a Halifax Regional Police Officer, also an avid mental health advocate for first responders and for human beings in general. Had a great chat. I thoroughly enjoyed it. He's a special human being, hopefully someone who I can call a great friend in the future. I hope you enjoy this chat as much as I did. Let's get to it. All right, welcome, brother, to the podcast. Awesome to have you on. So you're the guinea pig here, sitting here face-to-face. This is my first time doing a face-to-face chat with somebody here at the excellent Halifax Central Library Media Room.
I know.
Which is free for people to use. It's crazy.
And we have our own dude out there that helps.
We have a dude out there that'll just walk in if we need him.
Which is nice.
Like, it's awesome. We run the place, run the joint.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So, Tyler, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
I've been a fan of yours for a while now. I see you around. But I didn't realize just how sort of connected our stories were. And until I really started listening about this big hike that you have on the go, which we'll talk about. So, but first of all, tell us who you are.
Who I am? Loaded question.
Yeah, totally.
I'm 37. I just turned 37. I would say that I'm a dad first and foremost.
Yeah.
I've got a little 6-year-old at home. I'm a single dad. It's really kind of my defining characteristic. And I think if I last another 50 years and people look back at me, if they say that, hey, you know what, he was a great dad.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, right? If that's my lasting legacy, that I raised my little guy with good values and I get him to be the person that I'd love to be.
Yeah.
Then I did an okay job.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I grew up kind of in the Halifax area. I bounced around from Cole Harbour, Clayton Park, and spent most of my later childhood in Bedford.
Okay.
Went to St. Mary's for a year, and then I got hired on with Halifax Police when I was 21, I guess. So 2001, I went through the recruit process, and I was officially hired on, I think, February the 3rd, 2002. So I was one of those guys that, I think, and to be perfectly honest, I can't say that I was that guy that, I grew up watching TJ Hooker, which I did.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
In love with Heather Locklear. I was like 6, and I'm like, blonde, she's cute. I didn't have a concept of any of that piece, but I loved TJ Hooker. I loved crime kind of shows, but I never grew up wanting to be a police officer.
Really?
It was never one of those things that kind of like, I knew I enjoyed watching it, learning about it, but it wasn't one of those things. But I did know that I wanted to get into kind of the 911 world. I wanted to be police, fire, EHS. And I think I'm still one of those guys who would probably be happy in all three. Put me in a firehouse, I'd be comfortable. Put me as an EHS medic, I'd be okay.
Yeah.
As a police officer, I do okay. I don't pretend to be the best at any one of them, but I certainly have the interests and the competencies to enjoy all three of them. But no, I had my intro to policing, actually, one of my mom's best friends, her husband is one of our finer officers.
Okay.
And he's legendary within our organization. And he and his wife really kind of pushed me towards it. And they said, you should give it a try. They got me into police cadets when I was in high school for a term. He would take me out on ride-alongs. And at that time, 15, 16 years ago, he was one of the busiest cops on the street. Still is. Nothing's changed. He's still, when I look at who I want to grow up to be in terms of a street cop, it's him.
Yeah.
So he kind of pushed, and so I started looking at, okay, well, what do I want to do? And I took a medical first responder course when I was 20. thinking, you know what, I can do some ride-alongs with DHS. And I took them with a guy named Ed Oakley, who's a firefighter here. I think he actually works out in Spryfield. He's a captain now.
Right.
But Eddie Oakley kind of gave me the MFR program, and a couple of weeks after that, I'd been thinking at around that time, I'm 37 and I still think I'm a kid, right? Like I'm an overgrown child, you know, in a lot of ways. And I especially thought at that age, really am I mature enough to get into one of these professions, right? Like, is there a point in me applying? Am I really mature? Am I grown up enough? And I would argue with you, and some people would definitely argue with you, like, even I'm almost 40 and whether or not I'm mature enough to do it.
Same here.
You'd be surprised.
Yeah. My wife would question my maturity level for sure.
But, you know, having said that, you know, one of the greatest compliments that I get from people is, you're a cop? And I'm like, yeah, how come? They're like, you don't take life too seriously most of the time. And I'm like, well, you know, I've been through a lot, and if I take my entire personal life seriously, I said it's gonna be a world of hurt for me. So if I can kind of ease up on life and be a child and be kind of my little guy's best friend, then that certainly helps. But no, so I had taken this first aid course, this medical first responder course with Ed Oakley, and a couple of weeks later, my grandmother had passed away. And during her funeral, my grandfather's a good friend of my grandfather, got up and gave a reading, and then came back and sat in the church pew behind me, and collapsed and went into cardiac arrest. And I immediately turned around. I was in the front row. I was a pallbearer, and I took a look at my parents, and I looked back at him. I looked at my parents. I looked back at him, and I just kind of jumped over the church pew, and I started doing, I went through everything that Ed had talked about. And it was just, you know, as if it was ingrained within me. It was, you know, talk to his wife, what are his medical conditions, direct somebody call 911, find a different, and I went through the entire process as if I had been teaching the course. Yeah. And, paramedics showed up, and I had actually just done a ride along with one of the paramedics, and he looked at me, he's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And I was like, I'm looking at, you know, and not to joke, but I'm looking at the box up at the top of the church. I'm like, that's my grandmother. Wow. I'm in a suit. And so after, I think we shocked him 3 times in the church before we put him in the back of the ambulance, and they left with him. And I went downstairs to the reception area, and I just, I couldn't be there. I didn't really know what to think. I didn't know what to do. I ended up just kind of going back upstairs and sitting in the kind of small little trauma area where there were the sticky pads and everything laying around. I just broke, and I cried, and I cried. And one of the chaplains came and sat down next to me, and he put his arm around me, and he said, you know, I'm here if you need somebody. And I don't consider myself to be a religious person. You know, spiritual, yes, religious, probably not. But what he did was basically he gave me a debriefing in that probably hour I sat with him. His name was Father Lloyd O'Neill. He's since passed. But interestingly enough, when I became a police officer, and we did our critical incident training, our debriefing training, he's one of our police chaplains. So he's touched the lives of thousands of people. Wow. And I just happened to be one of the lucky ones that got to speak with him. Right. And that was my intro into kind of, when things get shitty, what happens. Right. And he was fantastic. And it was after that incident, people come up to me and ask me, you know, you're a paramedic or you're a doctor? And no, I'm a child. Thanks. I just got out of high school. Yeah. But it was one of those driving events that I talked to my folks a lot about it. And I said, you know, I'm not going to pretend that I don't like the idea of getting into emergency services. You know, is there anything wrong with applying just to see what the process is like? Chances are I'm not going to get in. And then the second piece that I looked at was whether or not if I applied, once I got into things, I said, you know, do I want to be a 35-year-old guy and then have to, you know, retrain a dog with new tricks type of thing? Right. Or do I want to get at a young age and let them mold me into what they want? And I said, you know what, you forget it, I'll leave it up to them to figure out. Yeah. I applied, I was pretty fortunate to get in. I still consider myself very lucky to have gotten on with Halifax Police. Like I say, I got hired in 2002. And it's been a ride ever since. I've worked patrol primarily in the downtown core, usually like the Uniacke Square area, Gottingen, down in the bar area, and then I spent a little bit of time in West Division, which is where I'm currently at now, right? Which includes the Spryfield area, Sambro Road area, and out to Sambro. I spent some time working in General Investigative Services, which is a plainclothes investigative division, where we look after. I've always kind of, I've called it kind of the kitchen sink section. Yeah. as an organization, we have a drug section that looks after drugs. We have a homicide section that looks after homicide. We have a sexual assault section that looks after sex assaults. Fraud takes care of fraud. But then GIS looks after kind of the kitchen sink. They look after armed robberies, attempted murders, really bad aggravated assaults, stolen cars.
Okay.
And things like that. The busy section, and a bunch of wonderful people that work in there. So I spent some time working there. I transitioned out of sex assault and I transitioned out of GIS to sex assault. And then I transitioned from sex assault to homicide. Spent a short time in homicide and I'm now back working in patrol.
Wow.
Working kind of the 4-day on, 4-day off cycle.
Huh. I mean, how long, doing that? So how long were you policing when you started to realize there might be an issue?
Tough question.
Yeah.
I think that...
it's always earlier than we think it is. So we think right now is when I broke, but really if we're honest with ourselves, usually it's way beforehand that we actually, that was the problem.
It is.
So it's a hard question to tackle.
I don't, I can remember the first time that I had a bit of an aha moment. And I remember sitting at the QE2 next to a deceased body. And I'm probably not, I'm closer than you and I are together.
Yeah.
3-4 feet away from the person.
Yeah.
The sheet's been covered, the body's been covered over with a sheet. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I'm hungry right now. And in that moment, I thought to myself, this is becoming a bit normal for me. I remember the first time being in a trauma room when a nurse would look up at me and say, "You okay watching this?" And I would, "Yeah, I'm okay." Thinking, this is odd. But I remember the first couple of calls that I went to, and especially, being with with that particular body and thinking to myself, you know what, this is becoming normal. And I was very early on in my career. I had one boss that used to call me Schlep Rock, because I had a black cloud that would follow me around. I've heard from other senior members that, especially very back in the early days, it wasn't common for them to have little backdoor chats about me to make sure that I wasn't going to burn out.
Right.
I really only have, when I feel completely healthy, I really only have one speed, and that's get to the worst calls as fast as I can.
Right.
It's not to say that I'm going to be the best of the baddest, and it's not always to say that I'm going to get there first. It's just to say that, when a serious call comes in, my personal urge and need to help kicks into overdrive.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that leaves you completely exposed.
Yeah, totally.
Personally. And, I had seen some pretty bad homicides at the patrol level, in my first 2 years. I had seen some pretty graphic suicides in my first couple of years, and for that reason, I knew that they were there. I didn't really know how to cope with them. I was my idea of coping, especially in that early time, was I remember seeing Tom Cruise in Top Gun, favorite movie of all time, and he's having a bad day, jumps on the motorcycle. So I was like, I gotta buy a motorcycle.
Of course, absolutely.
So I went to Churro, bought a motorcycle. Didn't have a license yet, so I had to get them to shit the bike down. Got my license, learned how to ride the bike. And then for a couple of years, that became my therapy in terms of trying to, just on the surface and not looking at anything that, I really didn't unpack anything. It was shitty day at work. I'm going to go for a bike ride.
Yeah.
And then when I got off the bike, I usually felt better. But I didn't really kind of see anything in terms of really being wrong. And even after a couple of my really kind of paralyzing calls early in my career, it didn't really catch until a couple of years after the fact that I can't shake these nightmares and I can't shake these, these visualizations or these flashbacks. And,
did they start happening pretty early on?
Pretty early on.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk about Hurricane Juan here in a bit, but Hurricane Juan, after the incident there, and we can unpack that whenever you want, but I went to bed that night and I couldn't close my eyes, because every time I closed my eyes, I would just open the second my eyes would close, I would see that incident take over and over and over and over and over.
Right.
And I actually called in sick the next day.
Well, let's unpack that. So Hurricane 1 happens.
Yeah.
And everybody who's listening here from this area will remember Hurricane 1. And it was devastating, just from a hurricane point of view. It was devastating for the area. However, it was a little bit more devastating for the first response community in this area because we lost John Rossiter, paramedic in Halifax, who I knew really well, was good friends with really well, who lost his life that night when a tree fell on his ambulance. And I remember hearing that on the radio. That's where I was listening to it. I was a supervisor for the EHS Communication Center at the time, but I had booked off weeks before for some reason, which I don't even remember why. But when the storm hit, I was listening on my radio, and I remember the moment when John's partner, Jill, said to John Stewart, who was dispatching Central, that John's gone. Everything is fuzzy from there. But I didn't realize just the connection you had to that incident as well. So, unpack that for us.
Probably the scariest night I've ever worked. I was working in the downtown area with a partner. We were in a marked patrol wagon or a paddy wagon.
Yes,
And, for the first little bit, it was a trip. It was, going down to the waterfront and telling people to stop leaning over the water. They would be standing on the docks, literally leaning over the water as if they were going to try to dive in, but the wind would keep them up. I remember at one point driving down Barrington Street, and this guy was trying to find his glasses, thinking, like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're never going to find them in this.
Right.
And at one point, out of the truck on Barrington Street, I heard this massive snap. And a light standard, like the red, the green, the yellow light,
right,
like the actual box of the lights, snapped off of its pole, sailed over my head, and landed next to the wagon. And
oh my God!
My instant thought was, that's a souvenir. So I picked it up and I put it in the back of the wagon. I don't
really?
know, I don't know where it disappeared to.
But, oh man, that would be awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, it was. And then shit started getting scary.
Yeah.
I can remember having my foot up. My partner was driving. I can remember having my foot braced, my hand on the holy ship bar in the truck. And the truck rocking, and you couldn't get anywhere. Like the streets, and God love them. People would call. I got 50 to 100 calls from friends saying, "Hey Tyler, there's a tree down in front of my house," and I'd be thinking, "Yeah, there's trees down in the whole city."
Yeah.
Right. Like this isn't anything new, and I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do about it.
Right.
But it came down to what calls we were responding to, and you'd see these trees, and I mean you see storms in the down south, and you watch videos, from American television, you see these palm trees and they sway and they sway, right, and I mean they bend and they bend, and I mean they bend like a 90-degree angle. Our trees don't bend that much.
No.
Our trees, the entire root systems came up, and you would look at, these massive trees that were, you and I couldn't wrap our arms around them together. And the trees bending a little bit, but at the end of the day, what's giving way is the sod, the grass, because the root systems for, 20 meters around them are just shifting.
Huge craters left on the ground. I remember that.
Lifting massive craters, sidewalks are getting tipped up. So It wasn't uncommon for us to drive up on sidewalks. We were driving over people's front lawns, to get to calls. We had to get to calls. And, we had gotten called to a report of a motor vehicle accident, and the path that we took was down Summer Street in between the hospital, the queue, and the library. Not the library, but the Museum of Natural History.
Yeah.
And then we turned right onto Veterans Memorial Avenue, and we did. There was an ambulance stopped in the front of the road, and there were a few guys on board. John Baker was a nurse with the queue, Gilles Boudreau, and John Rossiter. And they were just getting back into the truck, and I remember watching, there was a tree to our left, so the tree would have been to their right. It was to our left because our trucks were facing each other, and I mean, we were no more than, if I say 10 or 15 feet, maybe 10 or 15 feet, we weren't far at all.
Wow.
Enough that even if we were talking at this level, in that storm, you could have heard each other. And I'll be honest with you, I don't remember if I thought it or if I physically said it to my partner, but I remember thinking that tree is going to And before I could think or say, that tree is the tree fell. And this massive, gigantic tree. And I remember hearing a number, and I don't know if it was ever true, but somebody told me at one point that they estimated the tree had weighed something like 21 or 22 pounds. Now, whether or not that's urban myth or if it was an actual fact, I have no idea. I don't know where they would have come up with the number, but it was a big tree.
So 21 or 22 tons? Or
Tons.
Tons, yeah.
Of a tree.
Wow.
Again, I don't know if that's realistic, but I know that's a number that somebody had thrown out. And I remember kind of blanking for a second and then just thinking, gotta go. And I don't remember any words that were said between my partner and I. I just remember jumping into my truck and looking at the guys in the front and then running to the back. And I can remember the front of the ambulance looked okay.
Yeah.
The back of the ambulance did not. And, I can look at it clear as day. Right, like I can still close my eyes and I can visualize exactly what I saw. Having said that, to say that outside of the truck I was there close enough to touch things would be accurate. I climbed through the tree that had fallen on the ambulance, got to the back, made my way to the front, climbed through one of the windows and into the back of the ambulance.
Right.
And I don't think there's really any need for getting into detail as to what I saw.
Right.
Enough that it's stayed with me for my entire life.
Yeah.
Another one of our members climbed into the back as well. He'd been a paramedic back in the heyday, prior to becoming a police officer. So I looked at him and I said, "What can I do?" And he said, "Get out." And so I got out. And then a couple of seconds later, he came out and he looked at me and he's like, he's gone. And I didn't really know what to do at that point. I knew that, I kind of wanted, one of my bosses came to me and said, "Hey, bud, you okay?" And I said, "Nope." And he said, "All right, let's get you back to the office." And I said, "Nope." I said, "I'm staying." I said, "I was here at the beginning. I'm staying to the end."
Right.
And so I stayed. One of our forensic guys came, and I remember him kind of looking and saying, "You know what, we've got live wires down." So the tree that had come down that I had crawled through had brought down all the power lines as well. So we waited for Nova Scotia Power to cut the power. Then we had to wait for the guys. I don't know what division they came from, whether or not it was City Fields or Department of Natural Resources, but these incredible guys that showed up with their chainsaws and with some work equipment. I mean, you couldn't have asked just to sit back and watch these guys. And how they worked. They climbed around that tree and sawed pieces off, and I was just in awe. I can remember puking my guts out several times. And then staying until the end. Then I remember one of my bosses, when I finally got back to the office, said, "Call in sick tomorrow." And I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
And I came back and got home, took a shower, closed my eyes, keep seeing the tree fall. Keep seeing it. And to this day, and I mean it, I was in to see my therapist the other day, and I still we're 14 years later now.
Yeah.
And I still see those. I still have the same nightmares. I still see that tree fall pretty near every night. And, I've got consistently 5 or 6 nightmares that are debilitating at this point, but I've had, a couple that are new that have added to the mix, which I'm still trying to figure out, but that's certainly one of them. And I remember I called in sick, and I'll be fucked if I know how, but one of the guys who I still to this day, although I don't see him too much, I still consider to be a big brother of mine. He called me, and I picked up the phone. I said, "Hello." And all I heard was, "You fetch up sick?" And I said, "Yep." He was like, "Get your ass to work." And I said, "All right." So I went to work the next night, and I ended up being one of the first responders to a house fire on Micmac, down in the area of Micmac Avenue, down in the Romans Ave, part of Fairview, or part of Halifax off of Bears Road. And we had a house fire where 2 small children and their mother lost their lives. And it was one of the first scenes that I've responded to where I thought, this looks like it's straight off of Ladder 49, right?
Wow.
Like it looked like John Travolta should be walking into the front door because you've got the house that's on fire, you've got, fire trucks scattered all over the place, you've got ambulances there are people everywhere. I looked at the back of one of the fire trucks and there's a white sheet covering a small body. We ran around to the back, they were carrying another body out, and towards the end of it, usually we have a body removal service.
Mm-hmm.
We always have somebody that we can call. Usually the medical examiner's office will give a call to somebody to come remove the bodies and take them either to the morgue or to a funeral home, which we didn't have on that particular night.
Right.
And so we ended up, and I say these things, I know that I'm not the only one that was there, and this is my recollection based on everything, but I also hope that anything that I say doesn't trigger anybody else. But we ended up not having body removal, and so we ended up placing the mom on a backboard and putting her on the jump seat of an ambulance, and then we put the two small children on the stretcher. So we had all three of them in the back of the ambulance.
Right.
And we ended up transporting them back to the morgue. And myself and one of the medics ended up having to uncover them, place them in their body bags, and then tuck them into their drawers, which wasn't something that I was in any way, shape, or form prepared to handle. And that is another one of, the several kind of things that have continued to haunt me.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things. I spoke a little while ago, and one of the things that you've probably seen on social media was the video that we had done for the hike.
Right.
And there's a part where I talk about being at McDonald's and seeing a little girl. And I kick myself every time I watch that video because I see a little blonde, curly Sue haired girl. And I was like, what's a curly Sue haired girl? I meant to say curly Sue with like the curls.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, I can remember being in McDonald's, it was a couple of weeks later, and I saw this, this beautiful little girl, and she had those curls like that I associate with the like curly Sue from back in the day.
Yeah.
And I turned around to order my food, and I turned right back around, and it was the little girl that had passed away, as clear as day. Like that little blonde girl with those curls was no longer that little blonde girl. She was the exact image that I had seen putting a little girl on a body bag. And at that point, I thought to myself, I was like, things aren't real great.
Right.
I was pretty lucky. One of the things that, I'm very fortunate for, and I think one of the reasons that I maintain a very strong relationship and friendship with a lot of EHS and a lot of medics, and there's a handful of names that come off, that come to mind, very quickly. I had gone to John's funeral. And his mother had asked if it would be okay if I went to, I'd gone to his wake here in Halifax.
Yep.
And his mom had said, we'd like for you to come over to the funeral. One of my bosses had introduced me to her, and it was known that I was the police officer that had been there when it happened. And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I went over, and I was immediately just completely adopted by the EHS family. There were, a host of medics who were there.
Yep.
And they brought me in as one of their own. And for that reason, I'll be forever indebted and forever grateful because, especially a core group of guys and girls that really treated me like I was a medic.
Yeah.
And I was part of that family right down until the point where there was a part in the funeral where we laid flashes. We were able to write something on the back of an EHS flash, and I was given one to be able to do. And I mean, that's, I consider that to be, in 15 years, one of the biggest honors that I've ever received, was to be welcomed into that, collective core and group of people.
I remember that funeral still. It was massive.
Yeah.
I just see flashes of the crowd. I know we had medics from all over the country come in. Yeah. I know we had a big get together at the Pogue Fido. Yeah. After that, we had a little celebration of John's life afterwards, and it was a big group. And
there was a lot of that, right?
Yeah.
Like, there were a lot of these just kind of like pocketed, whether or not you wanted to call them debriefings, but get-togethers to celebrations and remembering. And I was really the only police officer that had the special invite that was like, come on, we want you to be a part of this.
Right.
And to this day, I still have people say, why are you so close with medics? And I'm like, because they, at a time where I was really struggling, it wasn't, in any way, shape, or form that, I was neglected by my people. Quite the opposite. I had tremendous support. But in a time where, we were both grieving for very different reasons. I knew John, but not well.
Yeah.
I knew him, in a working capacity enough to say, hey, bud, how are you?
Yeah.
But to know that, to be a part of something like that was so profound was, and for the EHS community to welcome me in was just kind of like, whoa. And that's something that, like I say, there have been a few things where there have been a few events that have really kind of, been massive brick walls for me.
Right.
There have been a few moments where I've thought I'm one of the luckiest guys on the planet. And that was one of them to receive kind of some support in that capacity. And I'll forever have love for the medic world for that.
Oh, and then they'll have love right back for you as well, I'm sure. So how long after that would it be? I assume that you have a PTSD diagnosis. Yeah. So how long after that would you have gotten that diagnosis?
I want to say 2004, 2005. I remember I went to a couple of different doctors.
Right.
And I'll be honest with you, I went to a couple of them, and we had the discussion about PTSD, and we went through some of the screening.
Right.
And again, I'll be honest with you, I didn't like them. And it not that I didn't like them. Yeah, I can say I didn't like them. It wasn't even that. It was just, on planet Earth, we're not meant to click with everybody.
No.
Right? We're not meant to get along with everybody. And whether or not, pardon me, I wasn't ready for some of the things that they had to say.
Right.
Or we just weren't jiving.
Yeah.
I wasn't super comfortable. And, we had some discussions, we had some talks, and then I just stopped going and started to try and kind of, and I can't even say self-medicate because I've never been a guy that's, really used, prescription drugs all that much.
Yeah.
I'm not a drinker.
Yeah.
My self-medication has always been, at one point it was get on the bike, and then it was try and camp, be active, get outside, which is something that's led to the hike. But, I was kind of, for the most part at least, I thought that I was coping well.
Yeah.
I thought I was doing okay. And there were a lot of times where it was just like, this is just normal. Tyler's going to cry today. This is normal. Tyler's going to have nightmares. This is normal.
Yeah.
The room that we're sitting in here right now is like a bold red color.
Yeah.
If you and I come in here every day for the next 365 days and it's the exact same color, and then we come in here a year from now and it's white, we're going to notice a massive difference.
Yeah, for sure.
But when it's just a gradual change each and every day, and each and every day it's a gradual change, right? Like you gain half a pound a day over 6 months, you don't notice the weight, right? But and people don't notice the weight. You go away for 6 months, you come back and you've lost 60 pounds. People go, holy shit, you lost some weight.
Yeah, it's true.
And for me, it was one of those things where I don't think that I really noticed. I don't really think that I would have said, and I still to this point am not kind of to a point where I'm going to say that I cry all the time. I'm a sensitive guy. I always have been. I was always a bit of I'm a massive introvert. I'm very comfortable by myself.
Yeah.
I think that certain events have just, empowered a lot of those sensations and those feelings.
Right.
Things that I notice now that I know more, now that I'm more educated about PTSD and in that umbrella of injuries, I look at, my startle reflex, for example.
Yeah.
You drop a book in this room and I'm going to jump through the ceiling. And it's weird because, we're in a quiet environment. If there's a loud bang, I'm going to go. You put me on a shooting range and we're doing qualifications for policing, it doesn't bother me. You put me into a policing environment, it doesn't bother me. But if I'm in the kitchen, let's say, and somebody slams a cupboard door, I'm paralyzed for half a second. So my startle reflex, and people have even looked at me going like, what the fuck is your problem? But you talk to a lot of people with similar diagnoses and they'll say that it's the exact same thing for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things,
the hyperdiligence and the just on edge all the time.
One of the things that I had always just thought was normal was sleeping. I used to, I still do to a certain extent, but I would soak the sheets every night.
Yeah.
Every night, soaked. to a point where after a certain period of time, after having a new bed, we took the sheets off, and half the bed was yellow. And that was my half. I'd sweat through the entire thing. Yeah. And it wasn't actually, believe it or not, it wasn't until I heard my chief speak at an event where he talked about the same thing.
Right.
And I was recently in Toronto having conversations with some people.
You were at the Tema Gala.
Yeah. So I was at the Tema Gala, and then I went back last week and took the mental health first responder instructor program.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So having some conversations with people up there, and that was very common, and they all say the same thing. And resoundingly, the one people say when it comes to the sweating piece, there was like, dude, you got to get bamboo sheets. Everybody that I talked to about the sweat piece said bamboo sheets. I haven't really looked at it yet.
Bamboo sheets.
Bamboo sheets, apparently. I don't know why.
Really?
But it's one of those things that I'm certainly willing to try. But yeah, so it's kind of I looked at a lot of those things and I thought, in the moment, this is normal. This is normal. This is normal.
Yeah.
This is normal. And it wasn't until I think it was January the 5th, January the 6th of 2015 that I ended up in the hospital after trying to take my life. And it was a situation where that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I had reached that point, and everything that had seemed normal was no longer normal. And it's been since then that I've spent the last 2.5 years in therapy and talking to people and trying to be an advocate and looking back and saying, well, I'm not going to blame this on this. However, this might have contributed to, or, the sweating piece, that's a part of PTSD. The crying all the time piece, that could be a part of that as well.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily to say that, yes, indefinitely it was. When you look at the criteria for, what PTSD means and how we're diagnosed.
Yeah.
I meet that criteria. I still meet that criteria.
Yeah.
There are some days where things are a lot worse, and there are some days where things are great.
Yeah.
Most of the day, I function fairly well. Yeah. My development of coping mechanisms, my support systems, getting healthy has been a slow, steady progress. I still have really shitty days.
Yeah. Now, for me, I don't usually encounter any of my issues at work.
Yep.
I can float through a work day. I can float through chaos and, mass casualty incidents. That's great.
Yeah.
My trouble comes for me as soon as I get back home.
Yeah.
So do you find this sort of the same thing? I find I suck at talking to normal people or interacting with people that you have an emotional tie with.
Yeah.
Whether it be your family.
I was going to say, what's a normal person?
Well, I guess a non-first responder.
It's not me.
When I say that, I guess a non-first responder, so a civilian, a non-first responder, some people that don't have that life, that's not part of their day.
Yeah.
How do how do you interact, really?
It's hard. I was married to a police officer for, several years where I could go home to somebody where she knew exactly what I was talking about.
Right.
I don't talk about work that much. No. I never have.
Yeah.
I think that, I think anybody, whether or not, whatever job you get into, it doesn't matter if you're, cleaning the streets or if you're a police officer or if you're a cardiovascular surgeon. I think that when you first get hired and you first start working, you're excited. Right?
Yeah.
You come to work, you want to talk about work. You go home, you want to talk about work. It becomes, and then there are certain jobs that kind of, they really take a grip and they don't let go. And we happen to work in that environment where a lot of us, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Some people may say otherwise. When I think about myself and I do my own self-evaluation, I'm Cooper's dad. Right? At the end of the day,
that's where you ground yourself.
That's it. And it's not, I'm very lucky to be a police officer. And, I do the best that I can to be a proper representation of my community and my department. Does that mean that I'm always bang on and perfect? No, I try to be.
Yeah.
But when that uniform comes off, man, that uniform comes off. And I look at, even when I first got hired, some of the people that I really looked up to. One is the guy who got me into policing.
Right.
He works a lot.
Yeah.
But when he's not at work, he's not at work. Yeah. And when I look at somebody, one of my field trainers, married with a couple of kids, he gardens.
Yeah.
Another guy spends time woodworking, right? Like it's, I'm not a big downtown guy. I don't go out. I went out the other night, actually. I sat around having club soda but I refused to talk shop. And I went to Boston Pizza one night a couple of weeks ago, and they started talking shop and I left. Because that stuff doesn't interest me. Like, and it's not that it doesn't interest me. It's just that when I'm at work, I'm at work. I want to be at work. When I go home, I don't want to be at work still. So I think,
that's a tough balance, though.
It's a huge balance,
and
right?
A lot of people, and myself included, don't do it very well or didn't do it very well. I mean, but you have to learn how to do that.
You have to learn, and you have to be lucky enough. There's a reason that cops end up with medics and police end up with police, and we end up with nursing staff. There's a reason that those are the people that we're exposed to on a regular basis, but those are also the people that get it, right? It's hard for me to come home and to download my day on somebody that has no idea,
because we are a special kind of crazy.
Yeah,
we are. We're just a little bit not quite right.
Right. And
I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah. My thing is that I don't think, because I mean, you can date somebody in the same line of business.
Yeah.
Who understands it.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they give a fuck.
No.
And it doesn't mean that they want to hear it.
Right.
So, whether or not, whether or not me as a police officer, if I'm married to an accountant, a police officer, a firefighter, or a massage therapist.
Yeah.
What's important to me is, and this is something that I've had to learn over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And when I say I've had to learn that the basis of communication isn't based on who you are and what you come from. It's whether or not you want to listen.
Right.
And I forget where I read it, but somebody said hearing is an action. Hearing is physically wanting to listen. You and I are sitting here in a podcast because you want to listen and because you want other people to listen.
Yeah.
And, the old adage, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Use them in that capacity.
Right.
We're meant to listen more than we're meant to speak. And I find more and more so we become, we've become a society where it's, whether or not we're buried in our phone or our own personal lives, but, you end up with people who they'll listen for the pause so that they can speak and interject their opinion or their thought.
They're already thinking of what they're going to say while you're talking.
Right.
Like a rebuttal. Yeah.
So, listening is, and listening to someone and truly listening to them, it shouldn't be hear and talk. Yeah. It should be listen and respond. Listen and understand and respond. Yeah. And that's one of those things, again, and we look at kind of the coping mechanism piece. One of the things that I've had to work on is not as much, there's a medication piece, there's a get outside piece, but there's also the self piece, and that I've got to make myself a better person. Right. And, understanding that you have to listen, and respond appropriately also means that that's a value that's now important in somebody that I want to spend my time with.
Right.
And whether or not that's my friends or whether or not that's someone in my life as a romantic partner, you don't have to be, and this is just my opinion, to put up with one of us. You don't have to, and I say put up with one of us.
Well, no, that's a very good statement.
But you don't have to be a person who, you don't have to know it. You don't have to live it. You don't have to experience it. But if you have a genuine desire to listen and to understand and respond, you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And if I can look at you as a person and say, you know what, she wants to hear this, and I trust her with this, or I trust him with this, that, and this is just my opinion, that's what matters. So I can come home and I can say, I just went to, I responded to a homicide scene where I found a gentleman who had been burnt.
Yeah.
This is what it smelled like. And I can't get this taste out of my mouth.
Yeah.
This is fucking with my head.
Yeah.
Somebody in my life, be it a family member, a friend, or a loved one, doesn't necessarily have to be able to put themselves in those shoes to be able to listen. And to be able to understand and to respond. And that response can be, and I ran into this, last year during training. I had a really shitty day and I ended up kind of locking myself in a room and started crying. And one of the other members came and sat with me and he looked at me and I didn't know him that well. Great guy.
Yeah.
But he just sat down next to me and he was just like, hey, bud, you don't need to talk, but I'm not going to let you be here alone.
Yeah.
Right? And that to me right there is that's responding.
That's awesome.
Right? And that, and I ended up talking, he listened, and that was a powerful thing. And again, I don't think that you have to be one of our crew to be able to do that.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, we want to be, you know, as a human being, we want to be listened to, we want to be heard, and we want to be validated, and we want to be understood.
So what would you say, I mean, for you personally, what are your big coping mechanisms, or what are the regular things that you do for yourself in order to keep your head on straight?
Aside from eating Donairs.
Aside from Donairs, which is probably very important.
Donairs, mini eggs, and Skittles.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, it's not. It's not. It's led to.
It's awesome for like 3 minutes.
It's led to weight gain, and it's not healthy. I'm actually, you know what? I'm to the point right now where I've got somebody who's trying to help me with my nutrition.
Really?
Get me back. Yeah, my mental health journey over the last 2 years has been a struggle, and I've gained like 40 pounds. Most people would look and say, no, you haven't, and I would like, I'm the one that stands on a scale.
Yeah. I know you're preaching to the choir. That's the same thing for me.
Right.
Yeah,
but for me, it's been, you know, mental health has been the huge piece, and I've let my physical health slide, and I'm a sugar fiend. Like, I'm a legitimate sugar, you know, if there, I think there is such a thing as being a sugar addict.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's me. You know, they say, you know, go to the grocery store, go to the produce aisle and eat the rainbow, right? Like, eat your red cabbage, your onions, your carrots.
Yeah.
Eat the rainbow. I go straight to the candy aisle, I get Skittles.
You have to stay around the outside of the grocery store.
That's what they say.
You can't go in the aisles.
I know.
Because we're fucked if we do that. But yeah, you know what? It's like I say, it's evolved. First it was having a motorcycle. Yeah.
I just love being outside. Camping is a massive one. Camping, hiking has kind of transitioned. Everything that I've done has involved being outside in fresh air, and it started with the motorcycle, then it was camping, hiking. That transitioned into being on the water a little bit, stand-up paddling. Right. Stand-up paddling turned into my dad and I used to have timeshares in Florida. My parents did as well. And we both, mine stayed with my ex-wife, and my parents sold theirs as well. And I called my dad one day, and who had owned a sailboat years and years and years ago. Yeah. And I used to paddle up and down the Northwest Arm. From Horseshoe Island right around to Point Pleasant Park. And every day you'd see sailboats out, and every day they would say, hey man, what's going on? That looks really fun. And so I said to my dad one day, I was like, you want to get another timeshare? And he said, nope. And I said, you want to get a cottage? He said, nope. And I sent him a message, and I said, what about sailboat? And I didn't hear anything back. And then the next day I had like 15 ads for Kijiji with all different sailboats. Yeah. And I got the opinion he wanted to get a sailboat. And it turned out to be perfect, because it was, you know, it became therapy for me. It was a project for him. Right. Loves to putter. It's a good way for him to socialize. Yeah. Great way to bring the two of us together, although we sail completely differently. He's very academic, very by the book. Right. I'm very, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to sail by my gut and by my feel, and sometimes those cross. Yeah. But, which is probably why my mom doesn't come with us. But for Cooper's got a, you know, it's for him, it's a pirate ship. Yeah, for sure. So we have a pirate flag that we put up every time he's on board. Awesome. But it became 30 feet of space that I could control, so that when I didn't want to be out in public, when I wanted to go into my turtle shell, I could bury myself in my boat, and I'm self-sustained, I'm in there, I've got a toilet, I've got everything I need, and I could be in there for 5 or 6 days, and I would clean that thing 15 times a day. Never got dirty, but at the same time, I just knew I could clean it. Yeah. Right. And so that was one piece. But I write, I'm an advocate. Okay, cool. I'm a huge advocate of journaling. Right. I read incessantly. I'm a massive audiobook fan. Oh yeah. I'll usually go through 2 or 3 audiobooks a week. Except I picked up, the complete works of Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, which is, I think, 97 hours of listening. Really? It's narrated by Stephen Fry. It's fantastic. I just started it last night. So I listen to those things. Right. Journaling. I write. I've got an idea for a book, that I'd love to write, even if it's just for myself. I'd love to read it. Or I'd love to write it. A book. I write poetry. I love photography, and it's very simple. I have the camera, I have the equipment. Yeah. But it's just as easy for me to just take my iPhone And it's not uncommon for me to, like, if I start a day shift, it's not uncommon for me to grab a peppermint tea, more so because it makes my truck smell good.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, it's, triple bag the peppermint tea and then my truck smells good.
Yeah.
And then I drive out to Sambro or Ketch Harbor and I'll sit and I'll have my tea out there, and it's part of my area. I go out, I drive around, I say hi to as many folks as I can, and then I just sit, and sometimes I'll take pictures, and sometimes I'll throw, something up on Facebook and say, hey man, today's my office. This is my office. Friends, family, go out and have an amazing day.
Yeah.
So I use things like that. I do take medication, I do take an antidepressant.
Yeah.
I do the best that I can to kind of stay away from the meds, and I've been really anti-medication.
Yeah.
Having said that, I'm to a point now after a couple of meetings last week, I've kind of acknowledged the fact that, for the time being, medication's going to be a little bit more part of my life.
Yeah.
The more and more people I talk to, the more and more I'm okay with it. It's funny, and I attended a movement and mobility course in Montreal 2 years ago, and one of the terms they used was the movement diet. And they were like, this is your movement diet. And I was like, what? And they were like, well, it's equal parts strength, and then it's some mobility, and then it's some power and some speed.
Right.
It's your movement diet. And I started thinking about, your nutritional diet,
Right.
You want, a small amount of lean protein, you want a little bit of carb, and then you want lots of leafy green vegetables. So, and I hope somebody's going to steal my thunder, but I hope I'm the first one to come up with the mental health diet. And not in the capacity that I can sell it at Chapters, but
yeah.
Like, to me, the mental health diet, I think of, a plate, but I think of a pie chart. And I really hope I'm the first one to come up with this idea, because I think it's genius. But
it sounds genius.
The mental health diet to me is constantly changing, and my diet is completely different than your diet.
Right.
We're all unique individuals.
Yeah.
But I look at, the lean protein, you need protein. It's a necessity. Yeah. Right. So I look at that as being maybe my prescription, or maybe my pills. I look at the carbs as being my therapeutic time. So maybe a time with my psychologist, my psychiatrist, my family doctor, my peer support. And then I look at the leafy green stuff as all the other stuff. So my leafy greens is going to be getting outside. Yeah. My leafy greens is going to be going for a hike. My leafy greens is going to be photography. My leafy greens is going to be sailing. My leafy greens is going to be time with my family and my loved ones. And at the end of the day, I want to get to a point where, maybe my protein, maybe my prescription is always going to be there.
Yeah.
Maybe my carbs are always going to be there.
Yeah.
But the more of that leafy green stuff I can get, that more of that blue sky time, the more of that clean and that fresh, I can get, to me, that's the healthiest I can get. You look at, again, Skittles. Taste the rainbow, right? That's all the stuff that you don't need. Yeah. So I think about, and I know so many people who have used this as, Skittles make me feel good. They taste good. Well, Skittles, I equate to alcohol, or I equate to drugs, or I equate to, things like that.
Could be anything.
Could be anything. At the end, those are my unhealthy coping mechanisms. Yeah. And at the end of the day, when I think about my mental health diet, right now I'm probably equal parts, lean protein, medication, therapy, and then leafy greens. In an ideal world, I want 80% leafy greens. I want as much clean air as I can possibly get.
Yeah.
I want my life to be full of being outside, being active, being with people I love. I want it to be full of photography and writing and journaling, inspiring other people. That's what I want my plate to look like.
Well, that's a nice plate, brother.
And then even if I still have that one little piece where I've got to take my antidepressant for the rest of my life, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to get to a point where, and this is just me personally, it's not that there's anything wrong with it. Yeah. I don't want to get to a point where I get and I say, my plate is now divided. Half carbs, half protein, no leafy greens. So it's psychiatrists, psychologists, mental health professionals, and meds.
Yeah.
And I think that that's okay if you're there, because that can always change.
Yeah.
If I'm 450 pounds, my diet's going to be one thing.
Yeah.
If I can shave off 50 pounds, my diet's going to change a little bit.
That's right.
If I'm an elite athlete, it's always changing. It's always shifting. So there's nothing to say that you can't add a little bit of leafy greens, take away a little bit of leafy greens, add a little bit of leafy greens, take a little bit. And
that makes sense.
And that's kind of my, that's how I look at it.
Now, you mentioned a couple times now, outside, your love of the outside and hiking. So before we can't get it in, let's talk about the Big Hike.
Okay.
So tell us all about the Big Hike.
Big Hike is an event that I came up with that is going to take place on September 9th, 2017. It's going to be at Cape Chignecto, which is down in Advocate Harbour,
Beautiful.
Down towards Parsbro. Widely considered one of the nicest, most picturesque hikes in Atlantic Canada,
right
across the country.
Right.
It's one of the most beautiful that we have here.
Yeah.
It's also really hard. There are parts of it that are very easy. There are front country pieces, there are back country pieces, there are coastal pieces where you're looking out of over the Bay of Fundy, you're looking at the Three Sisters, and it's spectacular. Having said that, I've been really lucky. I've taken part in an event called the Big Swim.
Right.
A group of phenomenal people who have an organization called Give to Live. They host events called the Big Swim, the Big Swim, the Big Chill, the Big Ride, and I think they have the Big Welcome as well. And that organization, like I say, is Give to Live. And the Big Swim I've taken a part in, and it's an event where they have swimmers who agree to swim from New Brunswick to Prince Edward Island, which is about a 15 or a 16 kilometer swim.
Right.
And it's set up in such a way that we each pay a small registration fee.
Right.
We're asked to raise $1,000 during the time that we're training, and those funds go to an organization called Brigadoon Village, which is a children's camp in Aylesford.
Okay, yeah.
And Brigadoon is an organization that supports children who have chronic and terminal illnesses or their families.
Yeah.
And for every $1,000 that gets raised, they're able to send one child to camp.
Beautiful.
And I was like, I love the platform.
Yeah.
I loved the idea of doing something epic in support of something epic. The organization that's been the closest to my heart since Hurricane Juan is an organization called the Temacontra Memorial Trust.
Absolutely.
The Tema is an organization, and I'm going to drop them. Tema is tema.ca, tema.ca.
Yep.
If we have time, I'll talk a little bit about them. But they're an organization who have professionally and personally supported me and hundreds and thousands of people across the country and I think North America.
Yep.
They're frontline supporters of frontline first responders, military, and family. They assist with education. They assist with scholarships, with research, with training. They've got a variety of different programs and events. They're having an event coming up here in May.
Yeah.
Pretty soon.
That's going to be awesome.
So I thought, you know what, this Big Swim was killer. And I thought, they've got a big swim, they've got a big ride, they've got a big chill, they've got nothing on foot. I want to do a big hike.
Right. So proceeds from the Big Hike will go to Tema?
All proceeds go to Tema.
So if people want to take part in that or donate to that, how can they find you?
They can go directly to tema.ca.
Right.
My website is thebighike.ca, so it's just spelled it exactly as it is, thebighike.ca. We've got an Instagram and a Facebook page and a Twitter account that have just been set up. I'd have to look at what they are, but they're there. So if you go to Tema, you can just click on the public site. The registration site is right there. The Big Hike website lays everything out.
Perfect.
My email is info@thebighike.ca.
Okay.
We're taking 50 hikers right off the box. We're going to try and cap it at 50.
Okay.
I think we've got about 20 or 25 registered.
Nice.
We haven't really advertised it yet.
No.
So my thought is that within the next couple of weeks, once we start kind of promoting this, registration will fill up very quickly.
I think so. I'll put the links too on the UpTalk website.
Yeah.
And then we'll have you guys. We should have you on again.
Yeah.
In the summer.
Yeah.
Talk about how this Big Hike is going and really put a push on.
Be huge.
Any way I can help you at all with that, that's easy. So are there any other social media ways people can reach out to you if they want to?
We're going to, if I can mention one more thing.
Go ahead.
We just actually, and this happened on Thursday, we partnered with Take It Outside, which is a local retailer. They've got shops in Dartmouth. They have one in Truro. They've got one in Halifax. They've just actually taken over the trail shop on Quimple Road, which is a long-owned family organization. And it's Take It Outside. It's, their store name is our catchphrase for the event. So they're a massive supporter. So we're going to be co-branding with them in terms of supporting the mental health journey, as well as supporting the first response mental health. So anything that we're going to be associated with, we're going to link up with Take It Outside, in terms of social media. A for Adventure has been a huge help. And they're an outdoor marketing organization with a couple of phenomenal local individuals.
Nice.
So they're the ones that helped us with the video, and got the video out for us. They've been fantastic. We've got a couple of great people. Made with Local is signed on to give us a hand. And we're just going to start. We've just hit that spot where we're now kind of linking with different people.
Right.
We've just created some of our social media accounts. So within the next week, March break, which I'm off for the week, this is where kind of things are going to hit stride. The Instagram, I'm going to look at my phone for 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And if I look at my phone, because my person just set this up for me, and as I look at my phone, I actually see that I've got 2 emails that says, how can I register? And I want to register.
Wicked.
But Twitter account is The Big Hike. And Instagram is The Big Hike for Heroes.
Sweet. All right, we're going to get those out there and make sure everybody knows about those. And we're going to have you on again, obviously.
Cool.
Before we wrap this party up.
Yeah, man.
So I've decided, because I have to build my team for, I don't know, have you heard about Bobby McKenzie's an HRM firefighter.
No.
He does the Help Our Heroes charity golf tournament every year. In Halifax.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's in June. That's June 16th this year.
June 16th.
So you need to book it off because I'm building my team.
Okay.
So you got to be my first pick.
Deal.
So we're going to put together a team. Anyway, other than that, Tyler, if you could have one message to somebody who's listening to this podcast who doesn't know where to go, they're in the basement in the dark, you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
They're in that place, actually making sense of some pretty serious stuff.
Yep.
That they may do to themselves, or what would you say to that person?
One of the taglines, the main points that Temo puts out is "You are not alone," and that's one thing that I spent, and I'll try and sum this up in 30 seconds.
Yep.
I spent a few years knowing that I was a train wreck, knowing that I was stressed, I was contemplating suicide. It went for a long time.
Yeah.
And I buried it because I didn't want anybody to see it. I didn't want friends, families, coworkers, anyone to see it until finally I ended up in my van with my service firearm. And thankfully I was interrupted in that by one of my best friends. But I now know that, and I can tell you that in that moment when you're at that point when quite literally your finger is on the trigger, you don't see anything else. I didn't see my son. I didn't see my friends. I didn't see my family. I had rationalized everything. None of that mattered. Now that I'm out of that, to a certain extent, there's always somebody there. We may not see it.
Yeah.
We may not feel it in that moment, but that doesn't change the fact that there is someone there who feels for you.
Yeah.
And just because you might be in a moment where you can't feel it, you can't understand it, you can't see it, and you can't hear it, that doesn't mean that there's not a hand reaching out for you.
Well said, brother.
And that's kind of one of those things in that, I think of the visualization, a hand reaches out for you.
Yep.
You don't necessarily need to reach up for them. At some point, there's going to be a hand that's going to grab you by the scruff of the collar and pull you back up.
Yeah.
It's just knowing that that's there. And, as a guy who has been, on the brink, it's not easy.
No.
Not going to lie. But there are plenty of people there. And I learned, when we put that video out, John, Gareth, and Daryl and I think it's gotten 25,000 YouTube videos. I've gotten emails from as far as Arkansas, which I think is in the United States.
It is.
It is. That's where Bill Clinton's from.
I think so. That's right.
But it's, the word is widespread. You're never doing this by yourself.
No,
even
you
if
never
you feel it.
No, that's well said, brother.
So.
Tyler, it was awesome talking to you. I wish we had more time. We're going to have to do this again.
Yeah, man.
We're definitely going to have to do this again, but
Cool.
Anytime we can help you or anytime you want to come on and talk about something,
Love that.
let me know, and it was a pleasure chatting with you.
Cool, man.
Thanks, brother.
Cheers.
Take care.
Thank you.
Throughout this battle I've had with PTSD, I would cite 4 very special women who have come together to save my life, as I would put it. First and foremost being my wife, Amanda. Next being my daughter, Julia, who both have been awesome and patient with me throughout this weird battle I've had with this, which can be frustrating at times. Next would be my psychologist, Dr. Robin McGee, who is fantastic, who helped me through the use of EMDR therapy, helped me to refile those traumatic memories as narrative memories so they don't bother me anymore and don't keep me up at night, and enable me to talk about them without getting upset or without triggering other negative symptoms. And lastly would be this lady, Dr. Manuela Joannou, who has founded a program called Project Trauma Support. Really special lady, special doctor, special human being. Sit back and enjoy this chat and learn a little bit about Project Trauma Support. It is my great pleasure to introduce to the podcast now Manuela Joannou to the podcast. How are you today, Manuela?
I'm doing great, Sean. Thanks so much for this opportunity.
Oh, well, it's certainly my pleasure to have you on. Really excited to have you on to talk about this life-changing program that you have started and that has changed my life. I can't even measure how much it's changed my life. So I'm really happy to have you on to talk about it. First and foremost, before we get into anything about you, I need to thank you right off the bat. As my listeners just heard, you guys at Project Trauma Support have come on as a title sponsor for UpTalk for the 2017 season, and I just want to thank you so much for stepping up and giving that opportunity to me.
No, you gave us a great opportunity, Sean. Thank you so much for doing that. We recognize the work that you're doing as being hugely important, and we're 100% behind you. In any way we can help, we're here.
Excellent. Well, thank you. It's going to be a great year. I know that every episode we do this year is going to have some part of it is going to be dedicated to Project Trauma Support. We'll be having, other organizers on, and we'll also be having a lot of my brothers on that were with me there that are going to come on and tell their story. So it's going to be a whole year of Project Trauma Support, and I'm excited.
So am I.
All right. So, Manuela, maybe just start off and tell us all a little bit about you.
Well, I am a native of the Ottawa Valley, grew up in Ottawa, went to school in Ottawa. I am a family physician and an emergency physician. I've had 27 years this year since I graduated, so I've been around the block a few times. I've always been interested in psychotherapy as part of my family practice, maybe more so than a lot of family physicians.
Right.
And I've also really been very fortunate to be able to do a significant amount of emergency medicine at various hospitals. In the beginning I started off working in the Ottawa General, Ottawa Civic. More recently I've been in the local hospital here in Perth. But I've also had some time up north in a small northern community. So I've had a good experience with the spectrum of emergency services, and always been very, very interested in the human experience and how we can cope emotionally when we are called to address some of the worst things that can get thrown at us.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Through your work as an emergency physician, what sort of started coming into your head as far as wanting to start a program like Project Trauma Support?
Well, after all the years of emergency medicine that I've done, I will have to confess that I've had my own dragons to slay, so to speak. I've had some very, very difficult cases that have made me think, wow, like how do you process all this and keep on working in a sort of an effective way? So certainly personal experience through my profession. I've also had my own personal experiences in my own life that have, been somewhat stressful to deal with, and we all have those.
Yeah.
I guess what really got me prompted to start on this journey of putting together a program that addresses PTSD in first responders and military is when a colleague of ours in the emergency department did take his own life in July of 2014, and it was absolutely devastating, and none of us saw it coming. And I just thought, something has to happen. This is impossible. We can't let this sort of thing ever happen again. I know that it's impossible to think that you're going to be able to change everything and control and stop every such thing. However, I thought somebody's got to start doing something, and I started on a search to see just what sort of program was available to really do the deep diving into the human psyche and help people who were struggling from PTSD.
Right.
It struck me that there's so much now in the media, on social media, and the news about the problem we have with PTSD in first responders and military. Everybody's acknowledging it's a huge problem, that we need to do something about it. But the piece to me that was sort of glaringly missing is, well, what exactly do we do about it? One of the things I was always interested in was putting together programs for workshops and retreats, and I thought that, being able to have a program for PTSD that was very intense would be a good place to start. And I just didn't really find much in Canada that was being done along those lines.
Right.
So kind of went seeking further afield.
Okay. And yeah, so where was it that you actually found something that sort of looked like what you wanted?
Well, I was pretty intrigued with the work that was being done by the Save a Warrior program in the States, and then that translated into the Sparta program.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to contact the providers of the program, who I am happy to name. Michael Salonius, Philip Folsom, Cheyenne Price were really wonderful people to work with, and they graciously agreed to come to Canada to put on a program with us at our facility. And it was very, very powerful, and there's no doubt that these are very, very skilled, talented, intelligent people who are really on to something life-changing in the U.S.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you talk about the facility, so just to let our listeners know, you're in Perth, and you have what was an old horse ranch right there?
Yeah, we have 260 acres on the Tay River in Perth. Wow. It's a nice property, and we did actually start our whole facility here as a horse stable back in 1999. We built a horse stable. I've always been horse crazy. I was born that way. So we ran our stable as Northern Lights Academy from 1999 through till 2004. So we had 35 horses on the property at one time. We were doing boarding and training and horseback lessons, and we raised some of our own horses. We did a lot of showing. And I loved having the horses here. And in that time, I started doing a little bit of dabbling and training in the equine assisted psychotherapy in the EGALA model. I did my training in 2003, and I was a little bit ahead of the curve, even though I had great belief in the powers of equine therapy. It just wasn't the right time. Nobody recognized the value of it, and there really certainly was no funding for it. So in 2004, I realized that I had to move my medical office in the spa that I had started in town. The building was sold where I was renting, and I was getting kicked out. So I started thinking about where I could move to, and it sort of all of a sudden struck me that the farm would be a great place to move our operations. I was ready to expand. The spa was doing well, and we were very fortunate that our township allowed us to do the renovations necessary to change the zoning to be able to do that. So since 2005, when we moved over, we've just been growing and building and adding on to the facility. And then in the late part of 2014, we built the facility that we call Aqua, which is where we host the Project Trauma Support cohorts.
Yeah, and it's absolutely breathtaking there. It's beautiful. Obviously, I know because I was there. It's a perfect spot. As we get into Project Trauma Support a little bit more for my listeners, it's a 5.5-day immersive program where you and others like you, day and night, work on skills
to help you get past this PTSD and help you get past the moral injury, which is something different that you're looking after, which is different than other programs that I've found, is all these side feelings that you get. I know in my case, from what happened to me, even though I dealt with my memories, I refiled my traumatic memories back into narrative memories with the help of Dr. Robin McGee and EMDR therapy. But once that was done, which was successful, I still had all these feelings of guilt and bitterness and anger over what had happened, and those feelings were really what was holding me back from, continuing my life.
And that is very true. Those things that you just listed are very much part of what we call the moral injury. The moral injury is that injury that occurs, it's inflicted right on our very souls, if you will. It's the guilt and the shame and the anger and the horror and the sense of injustice. And, the part of you that's really self-deprecating about what role you may have played in critical and salient incidences.
Right.
Moral injury occurs when you did something you feel that you absolutely should not have, or you didn't do something that you think you should have, or you bore witness to something that is just plain wrong and you were powerless to stop it, or worse, you felt that you were partly an instigator in the whole thing.
Yeah, and I never really thought of it until I was up there and, sitting down for your program. I never thought of those feelings that way, that, they were the last things I had to get over in order to be able to integrate back into life successfully. And it was a light bulb moment for me, for sure. And why, this Project Trauma Support, why I'm so passionate about it, and is because it was one of the pieces to the puzzle to save my life, was Project Trauma Support, along with the other things that I've had to go through to help me get to here. And it's such a stunningly different program than what you think you're going up there for. I mean, obviously there are a bunch of really special things that happen throughout the 5.5 days that just bolster this experience and make the bond really strong with everybody there. But it really is an essential part of healing, that even though we're still in the infancy of mental health awareness and what we do for PTSD, just that is overwhelming. Just the traumatic memory part of it is overwhelming. But to have this whole big other pile over here for these moral injuries, it's really important that we get the word out about your program, which is why you're on and why we're doing this all year. That moral injury that you talked about, were you always aware of that, or was that something you learned from Sparta or from other agencies?
Now, I've always been aware of the moral injury. The moral injury is what makes up your own moral fiber, and it really is what drives what we would consider the true north of our soul. It's the part of us that asks us the really deep existential questions. And I think the moral injury is the most difficult part of PTSD to treat. And I think it's the part that probably prompts people to contemplate or sadly complete suicide. That's my gut feeling. And the more work I do, the more that seems to bear out. So the moral injury is something that you need to address in a very special way. The moral injury, because it forces you to ask some very, very deep philosophical and spiritual questions, that's how you have to address it. You pretty much have to delve into spirituality, if you will. And by saying that, I don't want to turn anybody off, because people do tend to have some preconceived notions about what spirituality is.
Right, yeah, when they hear that word, and they tend to have some preconceived notions for sure.
It's true. We're not at all religious, and we certainly don't want people to be turned off thinking that our program is religion-based, but spirituality is different. Spirituality means really understanding the world around you and how you perceive your role in the world around you. It makes you contemplate the universe and the stars and the birds flying around you and the fish in the sea and all those sorts of things of nature. And it's, I think, really connecting yourself to something greater. And the greater that you connect to is really where you can find an unlimited source of power and comfort. And I think the program, and the Sparta folks do this so brilliantly. They start traveling into the world of spirituality by really exploring mythology and exploring the human condition and exploring the hero's journey and the psychic unity of mankind, as so eloquently written by Joseph Campbell. There's so much power in understanding that, yes, your story is astounding and it was devastating and it really threw you for a total loop. However, your experience and your story is not that different from the stories and experiences of all of the souls that have walked this earth before us. And that's how the study of mythology can lead us into an appreciation for how everything works in this world.
Well, that's so awesome. I feel like I'm sitting back there now. Just talk. But yeah, it's so great to go through. Having gone through it myself again, it's life changing. There's just no other. I don't have any other words to say about it that would give it any kind of, its due. It's right now you've had 2 cohorts. Is that right? Two groups come together.
Well, after the Sparta experience in May of last year, we did do 2 other cohorts, one for women and then one for women in October and one for men in December, which was the one that you were you were able to join. So yes, we keep tweaking our curriculum. So we recognize that if we ever had any hope of getting our program funded for our participants by the government sources and insurance sources, we need to be able to show that there's actually a benefit to attending our program. And the way we do that, of course, is with some well-designed research studies. We have been able to do a little bit of research with Dr. Sarah Dentry-Travis from the University of Manitoba. She's been very, very kind in helping us design a research piece around our outcomes, and we were able to present that at the Canadian Institute for Military and Veterans Health Research at their forum in Vancouver in November. Okay. So the research piece is very, very important for us. And I guess the other differences in the program that we have brought in is we want to incorporate a very strong peer support piece. Right. We feel that the way we can spread this program out and expand our influence is to have our participants start their own peer support groups, either formally or informally, when they get back to their own communities, and reach out to those comrades and colleagues that are still hiding in their basements because they've totally isolated themselves with PTSD.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a plan right now for another cohort or a date or anything like that?
Oh yeah, we have one that we are putting together that starts on April the 2nd, and we're still taking enrollment. We have a few positions left for that.
Oh really? Okay. If somebody wanted to attend, what do they do?
They can contact us on our website, so that's projecttraumasupport.com, and if they use the contact us button, the email will come to our team and we will respond to you as quickly as we can.
Excellent. And it should be noted that really the only expense that the person has is just to get themselves to Perth to your site. Is that right?
Well, we're actually at the point where we don't have funding anymore for this particular cohort. Okay. We did get a little bit of funding from the True Patriot Love Foundation for 2 of the cohorts last year, and we were very grateful for that. And the rest of it we sort of bankrolled ourselves just because we were still in the development stage. And we just felt very strongly that we needed to run these programs so that we could, show that it had benefit and so that we could continue to improve what we were doing. So unfortunately, we don't have any formal support financially for this cohort. We do have people who are hoping that their insurance providers will pay for it, and they're looking at getting that organized for themselves. Right. The accountants are telling me that it can be put through as a medical expense on your income tax if that helps some people. We do have a few people who are doing GoFundMe pages or having friends do GoFundMe pages so that they can stay confidential and anonymous. Right. And I've also been given this incredible opportunity through the True Patriot Love Association foundation rather this year. They've asked me to be the team physician on one of their expeditions that they do. Their expeditions are very famous and very powerful, and what they do is they invite military members and veterans who have had injuries, whether they be physical or psychological, to embark on these expeditions where they're really healing quests, and they invite some members of the corporate world to come along as well to, provide mentorship, leadership, and maybe ideas that they can incorporate moving forward in their new lives and next legs of their journey. So I'll be doing the expedition that goes out of Gander, Newfoundland in June, and we're actually doing sea kayaking up to Fogo Island. So I'm very excited about that. And True Patriot Love has given me the opportunity to do my own fundraising for this expedition. The money that we're able to raise will be matched up to $50,000 by True Patriot Love, and all of that, 100% of that money will go to paying the way for veterans or active military people to come on a cohort at our place.
That's great news. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a great partnership that is.
That's phenomenal. It is. So we're very excited that we'll be able to raise the funds necessary to bring a fair amount of military veterans through the program this year.
So, Manuela, where do you see Project Trauma Support going? Like, what is your vision for it, if you were to project 5 years from now or beyond?
Well, we are hoping that we'll have a number of centers across Canada where we can offer the program. And we're also hoping that participants who've been through the cohorts will feel prompted and inspired to start up their own peer support groups in their own communities. The peer support groups are very, very powerful for anyone who wants to join. They have, the assets in that they don't cost the system anything. Right. They're easy for people to get into. There's no cost to, participate. And a lot of the places they're running every week, so you don't have to really wait too long to get in to get some help and support with your symptoms. And, the people who've been through the programs, quite a few of them have found things that have helped, and they recognize that their ongoing healing really is improved if they're able to reach forth and teach some of the principles that they've learned to other people. So we hope that we can have Project Trauma Support peer support groups sort of spreading across Canada as well.
So I know the groups themselves, and they're for everybody, right? You don't have to have gone to Project Trauma Support to go to the support groups.
No, you don't. We just ask that the people who attend are, in fact, first responders or military people who, have been diagnosed with PTSD or are not yet diagnosed but suffering with the symptoms of PTSD.
Okay, that's awesome. First, let's dive off in a different direction here for a second, Manuel. Tell us about Bill C-211.
Yes, the great, exciting news coming out of Parliament this week. So this past Thursday, they had a vote for the second reading of Bill C-211, which was brought forth by Todd Doherty, private member's bill.
Yeah, we had him on last year. He's an excellent guy.
That's right. So he comes from BC. And he has been working on this private bill pretty much since he got elected back in November of 2015. So Bill C-211 is a calling for the federal government to develop a national framework on PTSD in first responders and military. So we were there up in the balcony bearing witness to this historic moment when every single member of Parliament in the House of Commons stood in favor and voted yes to Bill C-211. It's a very, very powerful moment. And we were so fortunate. Our team was on hand to meet with Todd Doherty before and after the vote. Right. And you can imagine he was on a pretty good high after the vote was passed unanimously. And as he was saying, now the real work begins. So it's wonderful in theory to support having a national framework. But of course the big question is, what will this look like? What will the treatments be? What will be the diagnosis procedure? How are we going to roll this out across the country? What is it going to cost? Who's going to pay for it? And all those sorts of things. So It's a very, very exciting time to be doing this work in Canada because there's going to be a lot of things happening, hopefully, in a fairly short period of time. Of course, when a
Certainly,
bill is passed like this, it now goes on to the Senate for them to deliberate it and to change any of the wording as they see fit, and then they'll present it again. So it could be up to a year, hopefully less, before things move forward, but still.
Well, that's, a huge step forward.
Huge step forward, exactly.
So we mentioned if people want to attend. What if people want to help out Project Trauma Support? Is there also a link on their website to donate if people want to?
Yes, you can go on our website and there is a donate button. We are partnered as well with the Mood Disorder Society of Canada, which I think is a huge benefit to us, and it's very exciting for us. So the Mood Disorder Society of Canada are a very well-known, well-established entity that works very closely with the Mental Health Commissioner of Canada.
Okay. All right.
And the executive directors have been hugely supportive of our work and our program, and they have helped us with fundraising. So if you go on our contact or our Donate Now button on our page, which is again www.projecttraumasupport.com. If you donate, you can print off an automatic tax receipt. And our partnership with Mood Disorders is very strategic and very beneficial, and we're very excited about it because they're doing quite a lot of lobbying and education at the federal government level about PTSD and about the program that we're offering. And they've been hugely supportive. I think they recognize that we have some advantages with our program over some of the other things that are being done right now in Canada.
Absolutely. I'll make sure I put a link to them on our website as well under your guest information. That's another great partnership for sure.
And if anyone is interested in helping military with PTSD or veterans with PTSD, and if they feel that they'd like to sponsor me on the track
absolutely.
Out of Newfoundland through True Patriot Love, I would really appreciate it if you would also put a link to our fundraising page on your podcast.
Yeah, for sure. You can count on it. That's fine. How else can people reach out to you on social media as far as Project Trauma Support?
We have a Facebook page, and it again is just Project Trauma Support. So we try to keep things on the page that are sort of uplifting, educational, and of news interest. You'll find one thing about our media presence is that we always focus on growth. We focus on the positive. We focus on, moving forward in life, and we don't tend to in any time focus on the terrible things that have happened to us or all the wrongs that have occurred, as we try to get through our treatment process.
Okay, that's great. I'll make sure all those links get up there as well. And now, Manuela, if you were to say something to somebody who's listening to this right now, who's going through trouble with mental health, doesn't quite know where to go, they're in that dark place, what would you say to them if you could say something?
I would say you are not alone. I would say there is hope. There is every reason for you to hope that things can get better, that everything that has caused you to stay isolated, the guilt, the shame, the fear, does not stand in good stead. It is not serving you well. And the first thing you need to do is reach out to somebody who is understanding and caring. And hopefully there will be someone near you that might be part of a support system, such as Project Trauma Support, or maybe a peer support person within their organization. Sometimes we are our own worst enemies because the guilt and the shame will keep us isolated and keep us from reaching out for the help that we need. And you really need to critically examine those things that are barriers to you getting better and try to set them aside and step forth proudly, knowing that having PTSD is not something to be ashamed of. It really is something that almost is a badge of the experience that you've had, and it's a testimonial to the fact that, yes, you have done some work that is very, very risky and very dangerous and takes a lot of courage, and the only reason that you got injured is because you are human.
Amen to that. Well said, as always. Manuela, I thank you so much for coming on, and I often can't find the words to say to you because of how much of an impact you and your program have made on my life. I often find myself tongue-tied when trying to say something to you, but thank you, thank you. And I will, as I said, I'm going to work to try to get this message out, to get this program out to whoever needs it, and help any way I can. People are going to be learning through the year. They're going to be hearing from other special people that you have in this program, because it's not, you are so crazy special. It's not just the take on the program that is the big thing. We are hearing, we hear from other really special people who come from amazing backgrounds to speak on this subject. And the people that you have around you are really another testament to you and the hard work that you've put into this. And I just want to say congratulations on everything you've done so far. And you are saving lives, and you're going to continue to save lives. And if there's anything the podcast or I personally can ever do, that all you have to do is reach out.
Well, Sean, I'm really in awe of what you're doing, and I always like to say to people, you did not go through all of this for nothing. And when you can take all of your experiences and all the things that you've learned and then turn them around to use them in such a creative way as to deliver this podcast that you've put together, I'm in awe of what you're doing, and you just keep on going, making a huge difference.
Oh, well, thank you. It's my pleasure. I love you, sister. You know I do, and I wish you all the best, and please take care of you and all those around you.
Thank you so much, Sean. We'll be talking soon.
For sure. And that'll wrap up another episode of UpTalk Podcast. Thanks to all my sponsors again. You can check them out at uptalkpodcast.com. They're an awesome group of people. Thanks to Jill, Tyler, and Manuela for taking the time to come on the podcast and tell us about themselves and the work they are doing and relate their stories to us. It's always appreciated. I hope you enjoyed listening to them as much as I enjoyed talking to them, for sure. I can tell you that there's lots of awesome guests that are waiting to come on and have a chat, so we won't waste too much time before we get another episode out. And until then, if you could listen, subscribe to, and share the podcast as much as you can, that would be a great help. If you have any ideas that you would like to see on the podcast, you can message me at the bottom of the website. There's a spot where you can message. If you have any ideas for guests, or if you have an event coming up that you would like me to talk about on the podcast, you can let me know that as well. I'd like to highlight some events going on in different areas each episode, just to let people know about some events that are going on. So definitely let me know if you hear of any, because there are lots around. So until we chat again, as always, take care of yourself and each other.
'Cause we ain't superheroes, we're just ordinary people trying to make the difference and the first on every scene. And it's a heavy, heavy burden to carry all this hurting when you can't unsee the things you've seen. It keeps going on. When those sirens are gone, it keeps going on. When those sirens are gone.